Well, let's jump in and talk about the episode today.
Let's do it.
Will, you want to start us out?
Yeah. So, again, quick plug for what we do here. We like to recap each and every episode, and we cut that recap out and host it separately just for, ease of viewing for when you want a quick refresh, on Thursday or whatever before the new episode airs. So if you find yourself on just that recap video, but you're interested in hearing Blake and I's thoughts, theories, discussion on the episode proper, just click down below. We'll link it. Either in the comments or in the description box, and there you can find the full podcast. But without further ado, let's jump into the recap. Let's jump into this week's recap of Critical Role Campaign 3, Episode 27, A Race for the Prize. So we pick up with Bell's Hells plus Dusk at the undercarriage where they are staying for the night. They end up getting 3 rooms total and, decide to split up amongst them. But before we bed down for the night, we have some things happen. There's a lot of discussing and planning how they should approach this Armand Trusty situation and the Paragon's call. Like, how do they want to get in there? Basically, how they want to handle that. And it essentially boils down to Ashton going in under the guise of looking for work via his relationship with Ratanish that they had kind of established at the ball a little whiles back. And if that goes, sideways, basically Death Wish race. We'll do something with that. So the conversation then turns to Fern's postcards, and the group inspects them for any hidden clues. And Chetney leads this investigation and ends up getting a whisper from Matt after rolling pretty high. I don't remember the exact number, but he reveals that he thinks it's strange, like the things he noticed from his investigation, rather. He thinks it's kind of strange that these cards are in such like mint condition, pristine, right. Like none of the corners are bent or anything, and yet Fern has presumably had them for decades. So that just seems kind of strange, almost as if they have not changed hands very much. He also notices that they're all unique, one-of-a-kind creations. They all have, I'm not sure if it's explicitly said that they're painted, but they all have like artworks, handmade artworks on each one, and they're all in the same handwriting as well. So there's a lot of discussion on this, are they really from her parents? Fern does reveal that her Nan does a lot of painting and is a great painter, so it kind of is bubbling up that maybe these postcards were from her grandma. And there's just a lot of speculation on this, and Fern isn't really sure what to make of it, but Orem does point out that, hey, we're meeting with your parents here in a couple days, we can probably find answers then. So that kind of is laid to the side for now. People start splitting up to go to bed at this point, but Imogen asks Laudna if they can talk privately, and they kind of leave everyone else. And Imogen leaves first, and Laudna's following her, but before she can, Dusk kind of pulls her aside and essentially asks her on a date. Laudna is super flustered by this and says, I need time to think about it, basically, while pulling out her hair and everything. So then she leaves and goes and talks to Imogen. And they basically air out all their feelings and kind of hash out this little dispute they've been having ever since the Gnarl Rock incident. They kind of each speak their minds, and they basically reconcile. They like, I've missed you so much too, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of this, they're like, let's pretend we're still mad at each other, though, because, FCG was trying to help me through this. And I think, it would really be great if we could let FCG be the one to resolve things for us, to make FCG feel better. So the two part ways, but as they do, they're like making a big scene about like crying and being like so upset. And FCG sees this, and he like transfers suffering from Laudna and casts calm emotions on her. And then FCG apologizes to Imogen, being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been distracted. I'm sorry I haven't helped you through this. Like, I'm such a failure." And he begins malfunctioning, kind of stuttering like he does, and also confusing words and ideas and people. And Imogen is like, "Oh my gosh, FCG, like you can't prioritize everyone else over yourself. Like, I'm fine. Like, we gotta take care of you. You've been going through so much recently, processing this Dancer revelations, the fact that he's this, ancient Aormaton. And FCG's like, yeah, like I don't know what I am. Like, why did Dancer leave me? why can't I remember anything if I really am from thousands of years ago? And Imogen just tries to comfort him and is like, we're going to find this out. And FCG just continues to malfunction during this conversation. And one thing in particular is you're like, yeah, we need to reach out to Delilah, when he meant presumably to say dancer.
Right.
And so that just, triggers a lot in Imogen and Laudna, who's kind of still there hearing this as well. And they're like, okay, we got to get you some rest. Like, we're going to figure this out. And Ashton is also kind of around, and he's like, hey, FCG, let's go to bed. And as they all split up, Imogen tells Fern, who is on first watch, hey, like, keep an eye out on FCG. But one final thing before bed is Orem goes over to Dusk and is like, hey, you're looking kind of frazzled. Are you okay? And basically challenges her to a little sparring match, kind of just, for fun and to kind of get to know each other a bit. And Dusk agrees. And so they have the toy swords that he bought at Taste of Taldori, and they're going to fight to first to 5 hits. So they kind of have this fun little battle. Orem ultimately does win. He's the first one to get to 5 and actually ends on a slap on the ass for his final hit. And they're kind of like having a conversation while this battle happens. But at the end, Orem's like, I don't recognize your fighting style. Like, I assume it's Fae, since that's where you're from. And Dusty's like, yeah, I don't really remember. I don't really remember anything. I just have a few memories of the before, like being a kid, training with other kids, or being on a beach. But really, I'm not sure. Then Dusk, who has just basically asked Laudna on a date, hits on Orem and is like, you want any company tonight, basically? And Orem gets super embarrassed and flustered and, reveals that, I'm actually into guys, and kind of awkwardly takes his leave. So now, with everyone gone their separate ways to go to bed, we have Chetney and Fern, who are on first watch tonight, and they talk a little bit. Fern does check on FCG because of what Imogen said, but nothing really is revealed there or anything. Ultimately, the conversation between Chet and Fern moves to the postcards once more, and they don't really cover any new ground, but Fern does say, well, I haven't told anyone else this part yet. And she actually takes this gem out of her satchel. It's this green gem, and is like, my grandmother gave me this. I'm actually on a secret mission too. Like, I'm supposed to find my parents and give them this gem. So Chetney looks at it, and it's like playing with the light and shadows kind of in a strange way, and you can tell it has some sort of enchantment on it. He's like, oh, fascinating. He gives her the gem back, and then he also gives her the gift he's been carving for her, which is this beautifully carved wolf. And Fern loves it. She's like, this is the favorite thing I own. And he kind of hits on her and is like, it kind of seems like not the best time, but just so you know, I'm here if you're ever, interested. And basically then the watch ends. All the rest of the watches go off without any hitches, and that's where the episode goes to break.
Yeah, so great job, by the way. So, like, as the party gets up, they have a couple of errands they want to run, and then they want to make their way over to the Seat of Disdain to sort of carry out their plan of, because they've been thinking about, like, how are we going to get into the Paragon's Call Citadel, and they really feel like Ashton's connection to Ratanish from the ball is the way to go. Before they do that, FCG does go back to Esmer and picks up a breaching charge, which Orem ends up carrying. And also, they ask Esmer for a description. I think it's Imogen who asks a description of Dancer. And Dancer is described basically of having black hair, olive skin, and a star tattoo on her cheek. The party makes their way over to the Seat of Disdain, and Ashton calls up to the guard and says, hey, send out Tanvir the Rake. We got business. We've been invited. We got some business to talk about. Tanvir does come out with his troop of soldiers, I guess, or Paragon's Call, but also General Ratanish comes out as well, and has a fairly amicable interaction with Ashton, kind of like, hey, yeah, I remember you. And Ashton's basically like, yeah, hey, we're here for work. Like, we want to work for you guys. I'm following up basically on our conversation. And Ratanish basically says, well, around here, if you're going to prove yourself, if you want to prove yourself worthy of joining the Paragon's Call, doing work for us, You either have to fight or you have to race, which we know we've been heading towards this race for a couple episodes now. And so the party chooses, okay, we want to race. And Ratanish actually flips them a coin that's basically like a coupon for, one free scrapper, a loaner vehicle from Imahara Joe to do the race. Before they separate, though, another person comes out who is the leader of the Paragon's Call. And the reason this person's coming out is basically Ratanish is like, yeah, it's not my choice if you're going to be able to join or not. It's really her choice. And like, well, who's this her? And this woman comes out who goes by the name of Adohan Thul. And Ashton is immediately like starstruck by her and rolls a natural 20 on a history check for her. The long and the short of it is that she was a famed warrior during the Apex War a couple of decades earlier and disappeared towards the end of it before reemerging as a person of the Paragon's Call who really rose in the ranks and became its leader. What's really interesting about this character is two things. One, she seems to be wearing these form-fitting leathers and this cloak that's hiding a device on her back with a crystal in it. We know that because Fern decides, in true Fern form, once everything's resolved, Fern decides to basically transform into a rat and scurry up Adohan's back to see what's under the cloak. And not really clear what it is. It has a very much like a jetpack-esque vibe to it, but we don't really know what it is. I will say that as Fern is scurrying away, General Ratanish does clock her, and Dusk basically scoops her up and pretends like it's her pet who got away from her. The other interesting detail is Adohan looks very reminiscent to the woman that Imogen saw in her dream from the episode prior. And immediately they're looking at the sketch that they put together after Imogen's dream. But Laudna rolls so poorly that Matt's like, yeah, you really have no idea. You have no clue, really. So all this to say, the party decides, okay, we're going to race. Let's do this thing. They decide to head to Imahara Joe's to basically trade in this free loaner coin. Before they do that, though, Laudna and Ashton head over to the Old Mines Burn to basically just make sure that Justy is going to make good on their offer to basically watch the group's back. Laudna is immediately a bit restless with the environment. Everyone kind of turning and looking in unison at her. And Justy actually offers to clean out the attic to sort of figure out what's going on in her head, which Laudna doesn't say no to, but she's like, yeah, maybe I might be open to something like that. Justy also hands Ashton this yellow cloth and basically says, hey, tear this up and put it on your two vehicles so that we know not to target you during the race. So it seems like Justy's making good on the fact that they're going to tilt the race in their favor. Party all heads over to Joe's place, and basically he's pretty much wrapping up his you remember they had paid for their own car. Basically he's pretty much wrapping that one up, and they present the coin, to which he's like, oh yeah, I mean, awesome, I can give you two of them. And they haggle with him to try to get like all sorts of like adjustments with it, like, can we get red, can we get our logo on it? And Matt, I don't know if it was more Matt or Joe, but both of them are just like we're not gonna do that, like we just built the stuff here, we're just engineers, but basically sends them on their way, and they make their way over to, I can't remember if it was like the Bone Tree as the starting point, or if it was just like a key location, but basically they make their way over to the starting spot of the race. And that is where the episode ends, as competitors roll up, and it seems like we are on the cusp of the death race. So that's what happened in episode 27 of this campaign.
Yeah, good job. And again, for anybody that's just watching the recap, if you want to clue into the rest of our discussion, you can find the link below.